been growing attention in recent days to major changes and tensions within the leadership of the Chinese armed forces.
China's military is, at the same time, facing one of its biggest internal crises in years. According to US intelligence, some of China's missile silos.
The Chinese President Xi Jinping's anti-corruption drive has claimed 2 more scalps, and amongst them is China's top general.
China's president just erased his own military leadership. Not fired, not reshuffled, erased. Xi Jinping removed one of the most powerful generals in the country, sidelined the top operational commander, and stripped the body meant to restrain him down to basically himself. Beijing says it's about corruption. Almost no one who studies China believes that, because when an authoritarian ruler starts gutting the people closest to the guns, it's not housekeeping, it's survival. Because when an authoritarian leader starts firing the people closest to the guns, it's never about bookkeeping. This story begins with Zhang Youxia, until recently the vice chairman of China's Central Military Commission, the CMC. That role made Zhang the second most powerful military figure in China, subordinate only to Xi himself. He wasn't some distant bureaucrat. He was a combat veteran, a revolutionary pedigree figure, and crucially, a man with deep personal ties across the People's Liberation Army. According to Newsweek, his removal triggered what multiple China watchers privately described as a political earthquake, not because of who Zhang was on paper, but because of what he represented in practice. Zhang was power with options. Officially, Beijing claims Zhang was purged for corruption. That's the same explanation used for nearly every major political removal in China over the last decade. Corruption is the all-purpose solvent of Chinese politics. It dissolves rivals, cleans narratives, and leaves no fingerprints. According to Newsweek, Zhang and fellow senior officer Liu Zhenli are under investigation for bribery and abuse of authority. State media went further, quietly circulating claims that Zhang leaked sensitive nuclear weapons data to the United States. That accusation is explosive. It's also deeply suspicious. Multiple experts quoted by Newsweek and The Guardian note that China's nuclear command structure is so compartmentalized that it's unclear whether Zhang would even have access to the kind of information Washington would want. And if he did, selling it would weaken China strategically, which makes little sense for a man allegedly positioning himself as a future leader. As Henry Gao, a law professor at Singapore Management University, put it bluntly on X, there are 1,000 reasons to frame Zhang, and none of them involve leaking state secrets to the US. In other words, if this were a courtroom drama, the prosecution would already be sweating. So if corruption and espionage don't fully explain Zhang's fall, what does? To answer that, you have to look not at what Beijing said, but how it said it. An editorial published in the People's Liberation Army Daily accused Zhang and Liu of seriously trampling the CMC chairman responsibility system and poisoning the political foundations of the military. That wording matters. According to Francesco Sisci, director of the Appia Institute in Rome, Chinese political language follows rigid internal rules, and those rules were broken repeatedly in this case. When that happens, it's usually because something extraordinary occurred. Sisci's conclusion, reported by Newsweek, was stark. A purge this large, involving dozens of senior officers, doesn't happen over corruption alone. It happens when the leadership believes power itself is under threat. His assessment was that Zhang's real crime wasn't espionage, it was building a clique. In authoritarian systems, cliques are more dangerous than enemies. Enemies are visible, cliques are quiet. Zhang's career placed him at the center of multiple institutional choke points. He previously ran the Equipment Development Department, the body responsible for military procurement, an area riddled with corruption for years. His protege, former Defense Minister Li Shangfu, was purged in 2023 over procurement scandals. That connection alone likely put Zhang under suspicion. Guilt by association isn't a legal concept in China. It's a governing principle. But suspicion alone doesn't explain the scale of what followed. According to reporting from the National Interest and Analysis by the Jamestown Foundation, Zhang maintained extensive relationships across theater commands and the CMC General Office. Names now under scrutiny reportedly include Wu Yanan, Huang Ming, and Fan Yongxiang. These aren't marginal figures. These are the people who move troops, plan operations, and interpret orders. When Xi removed Zhang, he wasn't just cutting down a tree, he was shaking an entire forest to see what fell out. Some analysts believe Xi acted because he feared a coup. According to journalist Jennifer Zhang, a former CCP insider named Du Wen claimed that Zhang and Liu were preparing to mobilize troops under the banner of saving the party and saving the nation. Whether that claim is true or exaggerated is impossible to verify independently, but it aligns with what happened next, and what happened next is not normal. According to Zhang and other observers, the PLA suspended routine operations, placed units on Level 1 combat readiness, and ordered officers to surrender their cell phones for inspection. Level 1 readiness is typically reserved for moments when China anticipates imminent conflict with a foreign power. It involves 24-hour duty cycles, mobilization of reserves, and fortified positions. That's an extraordinary posture to adopt if you're just arresting a corrupt general. It's like calling the fire department, the army, and the priest because someone forgot to file their taxes. This move suggests Xi wasn't just worried about loyalty, he was worried about coordination. At the same time, the general staff, which normally handles day-to-day military operations, was sidelined, and authority was concentrated directly under the CMC. And here's the critical detail. After Zhang's removal, the CMC was reduced to just 2 members. One is Jiang Shengmin, widely described by Newsweek as an enforcer loyal to Xi. The other is Xi himself. Even Mao Zedong never ruled the military alone. Xi now effectively does. That concentration of power raises a bigger question. Why now? One possible answer is Taiwan. According to the Jamestown Foundation, there are signs that Zhang and Liu pushed back against Xi's timeline for PLA modernization, particularly as it relates to a potential Taiwan contingency. Their view, based on available reporting, emphasized methodical force development over political deadlines. Xi's view appears more urgent. Some analysts argue Xi sees a narrowing window. The assumption, voiced by commentators including Tom Clifford, is that Beijing believes the United States is less likely to intervene in Taiwan under Donald Trump, especially given Washington's cautious approach in Ukraine. Whether that assumption is correct is debatable, but belief drives behavior more than reality ever does. If Xi believes the iron is hot, dissent inside the military becomes intolerable. In that context, Zhang's willingness to openly disagree with Xi's directives, reported by the Jamestown Foundation, becomes disqualifying, not treasonous, just inconvenient. Other analysts disagree. Writing for The Guardian, senior China correspondent Amy Hawkins cites former CIA analyst Dennis Wilder, who argues that purging experienced commanders weakens China's military and gives the U.S. more time to prepare. That interpretation suggests Xi may be trading institutional competence for personal control. History is not kind to leaders who do that. The BBC has repeatedly noted that unchallenged leadership breeds paranoia, slows decision-making, and incentivizes officials to prioritize loyalty over effectiveness. In the PLA today, officers aren't asking what's best for the force. They're asking what's safest for their careers. That's how militaries rot quietly, from the inside out. Xi has now placed himself in a paradox of his own making. He has neutralized a perceived internal threat, but in doing so, he has made himself the single point of failure for a force of more than 2 million active personnel. According to Global Firepower, that's not command, that's micromanagement on a historic scale. There's a dark irony here. In trying to prevent a coup, Xi may have ensured that no one around him will ever tell him when he's wrong, and in military affairs, being wrong once is often enough. power without friction feels efficient, right up until it collapses. Xi may believe he has secured his grip on China's military. What he's actually done is replace institutional stability with personal loyalty, and that trade rarely ends well. Whether this moment delays conflict, accelerates it, or simply weakens China from within remains to be seen. But one thing is already clear. This purge wasn't about corruption, it wasn't about espionage, and it certainly wasn't routine. It was about fear. And fear, as history keeps reminding us, is a terrible strategist.